Hello, in this training video I will be describing at a high level the software that we use to broadcast the Sunday morning worship services out to YouTube. This training video and a second one that goes over the system diagram and interconnections are the two introductory videos that explain how the system works at a higher level. You should watch the other video in addition to this one to get a sense as to how this software described in this video fits into the overall system. And as a reminder, the main task that we're accomplishing with this overall system is to send video and audio signals from the worship service out to the people watching at home. And this involves two things. One, it allows us to choose which audio and video signals get sent at any given time. There are potentially a lot of different camera and video and sound signals to choose from, so we need a means to queue up and to select and direct those signals as needed. And then number two, we need to stream those selected signals out to the viewers at home. The main software that we use to accomplish these two tasks is called vMix. It lets us queue up and send the appropriate signals out to the live stream. And what you're looking at on your video screen right here is the main vMix screen as displayed on the main laptop computer located to the immediate right of the soundboard itself. The vMix window consists of four main sections on each of the four corners of the page. Here, 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 and here. The upper right-hand corner of the screen is called the main output of vMix. It shows what is being sent out to YouTube viewers at this moment in time, assuming that we were broadcasting live at this moment. The people on YouTube watching the live stream would be seeing this camera shot of the lectern. On the left-hand window over here is what's called the preview window, and it typically shows what's the next thing that's going to be switched to the output and what's the next thing that the viewers watching are going to be able to see. And it's showing, for example, at this point, one of the PowerPoint slides showing a gospel reading. Now, one way that you can switch back and forth between such views or scenes is that you can queue up a view on the preview window, as we've done here with this gospel reading, and then you would go down the center column here, these gray little buttons, and you would hit the fade button, this fade button right here, and it would cause those two images to flip-flop. Now, when I click it, it switches what was on the preview window to the main output, and what was on the main output goes to the preview window. And now the people at home will be seeing this gospel reading from John 1, and presumably someone will be reading it from the lectern. We can now switch it back by hitting the fade button again, and it goes back to where we started with the view of the lectern. So this is one way you can do it, but it's typically not the way we operated on Sunday mornings. It's sort of a little clumsy to do it using the mouse and these buttons, and not quite as foolproof as we might like. Now, if you as an operator choose to do it that way, that's fine, but what I have done is I've set up keyboard shortcuts which make it a little bit easier to manage the switching back and forth between the different scenes. So, for example, if I hit the S key right now, S for slides, it does the exact same thing as if I had hit the fade button. It causes the current slide to go to the output window. And it will do that even if the slide is not currently in the preview window. It'll locate that slide and bring it to the output window no matter where it was. And then I've set up on the left and right arrow keys so I can go to the next slide or the previous slide by going back and forward using, again, the keyboard. So in general, you can control most of the activity using your hands on the keyboard and not using the mouse, which I think is a little bit more foolproof than trying to use the mouse for a lot of these things. Now, the documents that I've written contain a list of the keyboard shortcuts that are set up, and in another video I will show you how you can manage and set up additional keyboard shortcuts. And then to manage a worship service, what we typically do is we will print out a paper copy of the slide deck for that week, 2 slides per page. And then we will write down all the cues, the keys to press, and the things you need to do in order to properly set up for the next page and the next scene. And then during the service, you just run through the pages one by one, hitting the appropriate keys as called out on the printout. Fairly simple. So that's the preview window and the output window, and the controls in the middle, and the keyboard shortcuts. Now to the bottom of the screen, which is used less often during the service, but which is used a lot during the setup and prep for a service. On the bottom left, down in this area, are all of what vMix calls the inputs that we have defined for a given service. An input is typically something that you can send to that output window up here. Common examples of inputs we use are camera views, PowerPoint slides, and videos. Other inputs might include audio files and pictures, and of course the soundboard itself is an input. It's how we get the soundboard audio into vMix. So if you look down at the bottom of the screen, and I can scroll up and down, and it shows that we've got right now 33 inputs defined, which seems like a lot until you realize that about half of those are predefined camera angles. For example, if I press the C key for camera view right now, it returns us to the lectern camera view up here. We're now sending the camera's output to the live stream. But if I hit the 4 key above the alphanumeric keys, the 4 above the R key, it will now switch it to show the pulpit instead of the lectern. And then the 5 key will go back to the lectern. 6 will go to the organ, 7, the piano, and so forth. There's like 12 different predefined camera views of the sanctuary that we have predefined as keyboard shortcuts. Each of those is its own input, and in a future video I will show how you can set up and manage and manipulate those inputs like that. They are all tied to a single parent input associated with our main PTZ optics camera. The PTZ stands for pan, tilt, and zoom. The left, right, up and down, and in and out movements we can make with the camera to point it where we want. We can control it all from the vMix software, and typically we would pre-program those camera angles knowing what kind of scenes a given church service will require. Now, when I was going to the different camera scenes, you probably saw the camera move like this and this. It can be a little bit jarring to a viewer at home to constantly see the camera move like this, and it's really not that bad, but it can be nice to try to avoid it when possible, a little more professional. You can, for example, switch to a different camera or other input and re-aim the camera and then switch it back. So here, for example, I will switch to a slide, and then if I push the 5 key, it goes to the lectern, but on the right-hand window, this window up here, you didn't see it move, and now if I hit the C key, it'll switch it back, and now we switched from the pulpit to the lectern with the slide in the middle, so you didn't see the camera move. A little more smooth and a little more professional. You can't always get away with doing that, but there are often times when you can switch to something else, move the camera, and then switch back. And so again, I mentioned the keyboard shortcuts. I've set up all those numbers, 1 through 9, and 0, and a few other keys as the shortcuts to point the camera and to place it on the output window. Probably on a different training video, I'll go through in more detail a lot of those inputs and how they're set up. I won't spend a lot of time with that right now. So finally, on the bottom right of the screen is what's called the audio mixer. Typically, you don't need to do much with it, and I will have an entire separate video dedicated to audio issues. For the most part, you can monitor audio operations just fine by keeping an eye on this green audio gauge right here, located between the 2 upper windows. You can see that as I talk, the audio level goes up and down, the green little indicator there. This means the audio is flowing just fine and you can hear me. If you ever see that green signal drop out altogether, you know that you have an audio problem. Probably the YouTube viewers are not hearing anything, which is not good. And again, I'll get to a more detailed look at audio in a future video. Okay, now 2 final points about vMix. First, along the bottom of the screen here, down here, are controls that let you determine if and when the signals being controlled actually go anywhere. You can do two basic things with them. You can record to a disk video file, or you can stream to the internet. The two buttons here are record and stream are the ones that control that. We won't worry about the other ones right now. Typically on a Sunday morning, we use the stream button here. Just press it and it will begin streaming content to be picked up by a second computer in the sanctuary and sent off to YouTube. We use the record button here for testing purpose, and for example right now it's turned red, which means we're recording because I'm recording what I'm saying right now and showing to a file to let you see it that you're watching right now. And then the last point is that in addition to controlling what gets sent to the YouTube audience, we also control what gets sent to the overhead projector for those attending in person. We use an output on vMix called the full screen output, and this button up here you can use to turn it on and off. It's usually on, and it usually shows only the PowerPoint slides. So if you were in the sanctuary now, you would see the gospel reading slide and not the lectern slide, because we typically don't show the camera views on the overhead, only the slides. There are 3 keyboard shortcuts keys that control what is sent to the overhead projector. The B key will send a black screen. Typically nothing is displayed, and you can use that if you want to totally black out the overhead. The N key causes the current active PowerPoint slides to be displayed, which is what I just mentioned. So no matter what's being sent out to YouTube, if you push the N key, then the current active slide will be shown in the sanctuary. And we usually leave it with the N key pressed, but the M key will then cause whatever is being sent out to YouTube to also be displayed in the sanctuary. And we occasionally will use that, like if we're showing a video, then we want to show that video both to the YouTube audience and to the local audience in the church, and then we would push the M key. One other instance where we might push the N key would be if we have a second camera that's showing a unique camera angle that we would like to show within the sanctuary that we think might be of interest to those sitting in the seats. But usually we would press N and show only the slides. And for today, that is it. I hope this gives a high-level look at how the vMix software works and how we use it. I'll get into more details on the many points in future videos. Thank you.